My 3 must-have recruits. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the Yukon Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to thank you for the continued support. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom of your screen and follow the podcast on all of your favorite audio platforms. Your subscriptions, likes, comments really help us grow and continue bringing the best UConn content out there. We appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, UConn fans, let's talk about the future stars that could be donning the Husky uniforms. I have 3 of my favorites that I want to bring up, and the reasons why I feel as if they are essential to continuing the climb towards a dynasty. Let's just call it what it is, right? And let's start with these 3 folks: Braylon Mullins, Niko Bundalo, and Eric Reibe. Not the flashiest names, not all 5 stars, but I look at this a lot of times through the lens of what I believe Dan Hurley is looking for. And the first one, Braylon Mullins, is a 6'5" shooting guard from Greenfield, Indiana. The guy is incredibly versatile. He's known for his explosive athleticism and scoring ability. Mullins has been on the rise in the national rankings. I think he jumped from the 60s into the top 30. He's narrowed his list down to 10 schools. UConn is right in the mix alongside programs like Kansas, North Carolina, and Duke, and also Indiana. You know, you can't forget the pull of home. You know, I think we saw that with Donovan Clingan. So I think that's going to be the biggest competition, if we're being honest. Let's really kind of focus on that, because he may not spurn UConn for a Kansas or a North Carolina or for a Duke. He actually may go to his backyard in Indiana there in Mike Woodson. So Braylon is exactly what Dan Hurley is looking for. Good athlete, maybe not great, not yet maybe. Explosive, versatile, on the rise, obviously getting into the top 30 in the national rankings, which means he's not really a finished product. And UConn can mold him into the player he's going to become. His size is the perfect profile of what they have done in the past. And remember, I started talking about this a few days ago, where the lack of height, quote unquote, who says we have to play a small shooting guard? Right now, our guards are smaller in the respect of that are, point guards and maybe some shooting guards, with Solo and Aiden being the tallest of the bunch. But why can't you play Liam McNeely at shooting guard? He's fast enough. Why can't Jay Ross or Jay Stu? And the only undersized guard is your point guard, albeit with toughness. So with Braylon, it gives you another combo wing that they would love. That's that positional versatility that Dan Hurley talks about all the time. Number 2 on the list, Niko Bundalo. He's a 6'11" power forward from Ohio. He brings a combination of size and skill that would be perfect for UConn. He's expected to make an official visit to stores at the end of August, which shows just how serious UConn is handling him. Because let's face it, guys, everybody can come and take a unofficial visit. But when you take an official visit, it is truly where they start vetting you and start understanding if you're the type of player that they want. And I feel like it starts to get serious then. So that's why this guy is even more on my radar, is that UConn is extending that official visit, and he's accepted. Why I love this kid: defense. We can all talk about all these kids can score in high school, all of them. He can block shots from anywhere on the floor. He's long and versatile. He can step back and shoot it. He also can get buckets in the paint. Think a young, unpolished Anthony Davis. The only way he could get turned off by UConn, and I know some fans won't like this, is if they want him to be more of that Donovan Clingan role, where you sacrifice for the good of the team, which is what we want. But then again, I don't know for sure. I never met the kid. I don't know anything about his personality, if he's the type of kid that wants to be featured like AJ. But I think it's one of those things where that's what these official visits are about. Is he going to be the defensive stopper that you can get you buckets? Or is he going to want to go to a program where he's coming off the ball on screens and not just diving to the hoop, but kicking it out and being an ISO? That's not what UConn does. Third person on this list for me is Eric Reibe. He's another big man that UConn is targeting, standing at 7 foot tall. He's a center from Maryland. He's also caught the eye of several other top programs, including Kansas and North Carolina. Reibe's a blend of size and shooting ability. This is the intriguing part about him. He does have basketball IQ. He's a highly sought after recruit. Obviously, if you're 7 foot, you're going to get looked at. He's expected to visit UConn in early September. And if the Huskies can secure his commitment, they'd be adding a player who can stretch the floor and protect the rim. That's all true. This kid would be a nice hybrid for Danny. He's a power forward, center, 7-footer that, it doesn't mean what it used to be. If I look at it like this, we watched a little bit of Danny Wolf last year from Yale. That's who this kid kind of reminds me of, the comp. And I think a lot of people thought UConn was going to try to get him as a transfer portal kid. I don't even know if that was a serious target, but this is a freshman version of that. Lefty and type of big enough to learn UConn's offense, where the bigs are a big part of dribble handoff, and reads. Well, these three recruits, Mullins, Bundalo, and Reibe, could be a game changer for UConn in the coming years. So let's keep our fingers crossed, Husky Nation, because if we land these guys, the future is going to continue to look very bright for UConn basketball. Let's talk about the upcoming schedule for these kids and what they're walking into coming up after this. Hey, Husky fans, if you've been following the Yankees like I have, you know it's been a wild ride. Aaron Judge and Juan Soto are doing things that echo legends, but the rest of the team, it's like watching AAA baseball, with Austin Wells as, a pretty big rising star. The good news, you can probably snag some great tickets right now without spending a fortune. That's what Gametime comes in. Their new Gametime Picks feature makes finding amazing deals on tickets a breeze. Plus, you can see the view from your seat before you buy. And with all-in pricing, just toggle the feature on to see the total cost up front. No surprise fees. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Gametime last-minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Admittedly, I'm not a big gambler, but what I love is how easy it is to be able to start or even throw a flyer on a game to make it interesting. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, I have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket for YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn, talking about the offseason a little bit with what the kids are doing, what the coaches are up to, what's coming down the pike. Ahmad Noel and Aiden Mahaney have been busy, attending, doing their own basketball camps. I know Mahaney had a Mahaney Madness camp, which I thought was funny because that was the title of one of my shows, or YouTube thumbnail, which is pretty funny. These camps are more than just a chance to refine their skills in terms of like just getting workouts in. It's a really great opportunity to connect with the community at large. In Aiden's case, it's out in California, and in Ahmad's case, it's in Philly. And, Alex Garabin also made an appearance at UConn legend Andre Drummond's camp this summer. Always special to see current players connect with former Huskies, and, kind of continuing that family and tradition that makes UConn basketball so special. So as we look ahead today, today's August 20th marks the announcement of the pairings for the Maui Invitational. That got spoiled a little bit by John Rothstein, who kind of put that out there, but I don't know if anyone saw the and this is nothing against Andy Katz, because I love Andy Katz. I think he does a good job. But the Maui Invitational VCR kind of promo where they pushed the button in and kind of showed the pairings, that could have been done a little bit better, in my opinion. In particular, when we're talking about nostalgia and how cool the Maui Invitational has been over the years, it just was kind of lame, if I'm being honest, right? Just kind of showing, defending champion UConn. Like it just the production value wasn't what I thought it was going to be, because I thought it was like, this looks really cool. They're going to use a nostalgia piece, and it just felt like it fell flat. But it's a stacked field. UConn kicks it off against Memphis, a former AAC foe. and Penny Hardaway. They're also going to have on the other side of the bracket likely a game, or at our side of the bracket, likely a game against Michigan State or Colorado. And then on the other side, you have North Carolina, Auburn, Iowa State. It's a big field. That these are teams that are all going to be in the NCAA tournament, maybe except for Memphis, because we don't need to go all in on Memphis. But it should be an interesting event. And as I said earlier, with the guys who I feel like are lagging behind in terms of the minutes game and positional opportunities. These are the tournament games where it's an NCAA tournament setting. It's like on steroids, right? Because there's no days off. Like it's just boom, boom, boom. You play 3 days, and these games can be a grind. So it's great to have depth, and now also can kind of really show the type of kids, the type of team that UConn has early on. So you fast forward to next week. My son goes to school on the 26th. Guess what? Classes start at UConn, which means the Huskies are back on the grind with workouts resuming soon after. It's also kind of the beginning of, I feel like, reality, right? When school starts, you really kind of start to think about the new basketball season. And speaking of beginnings, you start talking about college football. College football is back. It's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12 are Huskies. You can get it all from Locked On, stable of college experts, by subscribing to Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoffs? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On College Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And just as we talked about recruiting, UConn is bringing in some serious talent. August 30th, Niko Bundalo, 6'11" power forward from Ohio. He's one of my top three gets. Same with Eric Reibe, 7-footer from Maryland. He'll make his official visit on September 6th. These guys could be key additions to our roster, right? So keep an eye out for that. Mid-September is another critical period. Around the 15th, we should see the Big East release its 2024-25 schedule. I am hoping to potentially make it up to Big East Media Day. I don't know if that'll happen with all the stuff that's going around from family-wise, but you can kind of see some of the matchups from the season, and we'll really kind of break down the biggest ones, which ones I'm looking forward to, maybe some ones that I'm potentially trying to get to, all of that stuff. And then later September, we'll have another recruit, Tande Yosufu, a dynamic power forward from California, is scheduled to visit. He's got another potential 5-star recruit for UConn. Then as we get closer to my birthday, because that's all that really matters, it's not September 25th, but it's later in the month, the Huskies hold their first official practice. This is where the journey towards a possible third straight national title officially begins, even though obviously they've been doing workouts. And then as we get into early October, we'll see Darius Adams, a top 25 shooting guard, a 5-star recruit who they've had some serious interest in. He's making his official visit from the 4th to the 6th. Again, another guard. I know the Malik Thomas. I think he said his date to commit is around that same time. So I wonder what dominoes will drop from that perspective, if he does pass on UConn or if he goes in a different direction. And I mentioned it before. October 23rd is Big East Media Day. I will definitely see Coach Hurley, but I don't know which players will come. If you kind of just do some deductive reasoning around the seniors, I shouldn't say seniors, the older guys, Alex Caravan, Hassan Diarra is a super senior, but Sampson, maybe one more. Maybe they bring. I can't think of another guy that they would bring, but I think that's it, because I think those are the older guys. That's kind of where we're headed, and then this would be kind of, I would love to get up to this because it's first night. There's no date for it, but it's usually in the mid to late October. So that could always be a potential. And it's also the official start of the season for both the men's and women's basketball teams. And lastly, I'm really looking forward to, talking about the celebration for the 2024 national championship at the White House. That's such a cool event. I don't care who's president. I don't care if they talk to the Secretary of State. Visiting the White House as a national champion never gets old. As a champion, whether you're in other sports, Chiefs have done it a couple times in a row. UConn, I can't. I've been to the White House 2 times, not as a guest. You know what I mean? Like doing those tours. There's just something. There's an aura around it. So I hope that these guys enjoy it, and really look forward to the coming season by just kind of filling up their time and staying active. So there you have it, the roadmap for the next couple months. Before we go, I have one more segment. And it's really about, can we just stop talking about who's a blue blood and who isn't? Because I feel like half the population doesn't even know what that term means. But we'll talk about it one last time. Coming up after this. Hey, everyone. Summer's winding down, but spending isn't, right? Whether it's back to school supplies, groceries, or just everyday essentials, the cost of living has added up fast. But with Ibotta, you can earn cash back on everything you buy. It's a free app. Lets you save money on groceries, beauty supplies, and even toys. Basically, anything you need. The average Ibotta user earns $256 a year. That's enough to cover a shopping trip, a flight you've been eyeing, or a fancy dinner out. Plus, with Ibotta, you can cash out your earnings directly to your bank account, PayPal, or as gift cards. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying it out. Download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. That's IBOTTA in the App Store or Google Play. And don't forget to use the code LOCKEDONCollege to start saving. All right, let me take you to history class for a second. So can we stop with the blue blood conversation? The term blue blood originates from the Spanish phrase sangre azul, which literally means blue blood. It used to describe the noble families of Spain, particularly those of Castilian origin, who claim pure lineage without any mixing with Moors, Jews, or other groups. So it's kind of a racist thing where it's like, ooh, we can't mix with those poor folks or those people that are of different look, religion, color. The idea was that the skin of these nobles, clearly, was so fair that their veins, which appeared blue under their pale skin, and were more visible, setting them apart from those who were considered a lower status or with darker skin. I am not a word police, so I'm not saying you shouldn't say blue blood because it's racist. I'm saying that the term itself is silly, considering its origins, and I understand the concept. It dates back to these Spanish conquistadors, and also kind of to the point where it's influenced by kind of this noble idea, right? So that's why I have something in my eye. That's why the Kansases of the world, the Dukes of the world, the kind of quote unquote elitist college programs love to label themselves as blue bloods. And I know that's going to probably piss some people off, but the reality is the list that I saw was silly. But over time, this term blue blood has become more broadly in English in other languages to refer to members of nobility, right? So if you're a blue blood, you're a part of an elite, you're an elite company. And this idea from College Basketball Report that the bluest of blue bloods is Kentucky, Carolina, and Kansas is the silliest list I think I've ever seen. Sorry for the pause there, folks. Seriously, that's something crazy in my eye. But yeah, this idea about blue bloods, like UConn is the greatest college basketball program of the last 30 years. When the field turned into a bloodbath of teams vying to win 6 games in the tournament, when it went to a field of 64 and now 68, and now they're actually they're talking about expanding it even further. UConn has won no titles where the bracket was 4 teams, 8 teams. I don't have enough fingers to say 16 teams. Like the majority of Kentucky titles are in those realms. And field of 32. I believe, I looked it up a long time ago when I had this topic come up. This is the last time I'm going to talk about it. It's so stupid. Kentucky won titles in the field of 32. And the only 2 times they've won national championships with a field of 64, I believe, are 97 and I don't know if it gets back-to-back. It was with Patino and Tubby Smith. Those are the only two. They haven't won 8 titles in an era that is equal. And I know college basketball started long before UConn started their run. I get that. That's okay. We can separate the two. Can we start having the conversation about what's more impressive? Is it more impressive to have 8 titles in a sham? Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Is it more exciting to have titles in a time where there was less competition? Or is it more impressive at a time where it's like an absolute war to get solid players, to get the type of players that you want on your program, that people are constantly trying to pick your players off in terms of, oh, come to us, we'll offer you another $1 million. I mean, I read a report from some college basketball insiders that the average coach was getting at least $1 million NIL requests from players who they felt like weren't even worth half of that or even a quarter of that. So, and I get it. Players, shoot your shot. Get all the money you can. But the idea that, when you could basically say to a player, you're going to come and we're going to pay you, we're going to give you a stipend for your food, and we're going to get you, free education, and you're going to be on Kentucky or Kansas and try to win a national championship. There isn't an equal distribution of thought process there. So let's stop with all the blue blood talk, because this list is trash. Even listen, I have no beef with Carolina. Of the schools that I'm around down in North Carolina, it's not Duke is no question they're the worst, but the idea that Carolina is a bigger blue blood than UConn is the dumbest thing in the world. Why? Because you won some titles. I mean, the majority of Carolina's titles are also in the under 64 range, like the under team of field of 64. It's ridiculous. The only thing that makes UCLA's run more impressive than what UConn's doing now is how many they won in a row, not the sporadic nature of winning these titles in a time when the bracket was smaller, teams weren't as deep, kids weren't as skilled. You couldn't go to like UConn right now if they wanted to pick off the best kid in the SoCon to come and play at UConn. That doesn't happen anymore. That didn't happen back then. Freshmen didn't even play for the majority. It's the reason why Lou Alcindor didn't win 4 straight national championships, is because he couldn't play his freshman year. So it's also silly that they don't put UCLA as a blue blood, considering they have the most national championships ever. College basketball report. Congratulations on engagement farming. But I'm done with the blue blood conversation. UConn's the best college basketball program of the last 30 years. No sham Helms titles like Kansas. Every one of those titles that UConn has won has been in the field of 64 or 68. They've won now a back-to-back situation, so they can equal that with Duke. The only team that has even a moniker of conversation in this whole new blood conversation is Duke, because they've won all of their titles since 1990, and they've done it the hard way. They haven't done it the easy way, which is 32, 16, 8, 4. I mean, give me a break. If UConn had a chance to win titles in a field of 4 or 8, they might have 20 by now. Because if you get to the Final Four with UConn, they don't lose. It's a dumb conversation. It's also August 21st, and there's not a lot of basketball to talk about, and football hasn't started yet. So just so you know, Locked On College Football is here for you. Thank you for listening to Locked On UConn as their first listen of the day. But as a second listen, I would love for you guys to check out the College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season of the gridiron. You can find the link to college football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.